At the end, Chris? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Chris is over here, so I'll knock it over.
I might do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Cool.
So, howdy, thanks for coming. As you mentioned, my name's Tom Brennan, and I'll talk to you about our products and our company. We got about a 10-slide slideshow. A lot of people say they don't like PowerPoint, but I'm giving it down to the bare minimum about what you would want to know about who we are and the product. So Acme Data is a best-of-breed provider of data quality software. The only reason you care about that term, best-of-breed, people have idioms around here, is that that's all we do. We do one and only one thing, so hopefully we do it pretty well. If you've got a lot of data and it's not in the best shape, we take your bad data and we make it good. There's one thing that we like to tell our prospects or people who might be buying our product. I am an impatient guy and I get frustrated pretty easily, and that's driven a whole lot of making things easy. If I call a company and I can't get a hold of an engineer, if I'm on a voicemail system for a long time, or if I get a first-level engineer, he's going to walk me through 20 questions when I know I need to get to the second-level engineer, that drives me nuts. So we make it very easy. You can get a hold of a senior engineer, you can get a hold of an executive management with no trouble at all. The products also were designed to make it very, very easy. Most products in our space were developed kind of for technical people, and even though I'm a technical guy, I don't want to know technical stuff. I want to push one button and get the answer. So you can't always push one button and get the answer, but we've done a whole lot to make things easy. So if you wanted to throw your PC out the window at some point this week, you might be interested in a product like we have. We also do a lot with professional services. Anything to do with data, we're highly specialized. So if you have a data problem, a complex data problem, a big data problem, chances are we've done it several times before, something like it. Some recent customers, we did 4 projects for HP having to do with some compliance issues where they had a problem, and it was in the newspapers, and it was quite a big issue, and they tried to solve the problem internally and eventually came to us, and we pretty much knocked it out of the park for them. Into it, we've done a dozen projects for them. Salesforce.com recently did a couple projects for them. So these are the guys running Salesforce.com, and we help them manage a number of their data issues internally. So if you have a Salesforce.com data problem, we might be an answer. We're headquartered in San Ramon. I only mentioned that we're local. We get dropped by pretty easily. Some of our customers, to mention these guys, if you're watching late night TV, Bosley, the hair replacement folks, they use our product. And the only reason that's important is they are #1. They are in 60 countries, so they are huge. Bobcat, if you ever have a pool that you've dug out of your backyard, or if you drive down the street and anybody's doing construction, they've got a little Bobcat there. They're the #1 in small tractors. Menards, anybody here from the Midwest? Any history in the Midwest? So if you're from California like I am, you know Home Depot and Lowe's, you have no idea who Menards is. Menards slaughters in the Midwest. They own it. And they're the biggest competitors to Home Depot and Lowe's. They use our product inside of their kiosks, inside of their stores. I think they have something like 600 or 2,000 stores, I don't remember. But if you go into a kiosk and you say, my name is Bob, and I've done work with you, they use our search engine. A small story about that. They had a very, very high service level agreements with their businesses. They had to be able to put in Bob Jones or company Acme Data and do a search, and they needed to come by very, very quickly. They needed to serve 600 stores, all of which had 50 kiosks apiece, so they have tons and tons of volume. So they had a very, very high service level agreement where they need to be able to search and do persistent jamming the system for 2 minutes and come back with all of these searches in less than a second. So we had a bake-off. A whole bunch of vendors came in. Everybody died. Nobody came close. We beat their SLA by 4x. So we have by far the fastest search out there. So if you have any high-level requirements, we have mostly customers who have millions or tens of millions of records. So we do extremely high speed. You're in Salesforce, you want to search for Bob Jones, or if you're in some other very, very large capacity application, you need to search for somebody, our application is going to return it a lot quicker. And that's using a combination of Boolean and fuzzy logic. So you can search, you can misspell, type it in wrong, we'll probably find the record for you. From a very high level, we do two things. One is data cleansing, and the other is duplicate consolidation. We do a lot more powerful stuff than that, but from a very high level. If you've got bad addresses, if you've got bad data you need it cleaning up, we do that. We enrich data so that if you give me something like this, I can give you something like that. And cleanse addresses for every country and region on the planet. I think the UN recognizes 192 countries. How we do 240 when only 192 exist? It's because there's regions that aren't considered countries. So we cover everything. There's data augmentation in there. We give you geo. You can give us a name and an address. We'll give you a phone number, vice versa. So we make the data happen. We find duplicate records. We've got a lot of brains around finding duplicate records. And then we consolidate them. And when we consolidate them, we do it with a lot of brains. So you have 3 records, and you need 1. We have not only the power to find those records using complex rules that you define saying, well, I won't go over them, but complex rules that will do what you want. We find the records, and say we find 3 records for Robert Masters. Companies have told us it's extremely important that they can select which one survives. When you do a merge, one survives, 2 basically get deleted, and they want to have a lot of power around that. So point and click, 100% point and click, designed for the business user. You get to define what record is saved during a merge.
When you're ready, I'm wondering if
It's a
you're
good thing you stopped me. I get on a run and.
No, that's okay. Are you going to go into, without obviously getting into your core algorithms or whatever, are you going to kind of explain how you're doing this and how it differentiates from hiring like 3 data set people? It's a real differentiator in terms of, without going into your algorithm.
I'll get back to you in a second, and if you can develop that a little bit, or I actually might as well just answer it right now. So in terms of algorithms, so we use, there's a lot of algorithms you've heard out there. So what's the bad fuzzy one? I can't remember. Soundex. So everybody knows Soundex. So I talk about that one just because it's about the only one that everybody seems to know. This is a data group. Maybe you know a whole lot more than that. But anyway, Soundex is a horrible algorithm. But if we used it, which we don't, we would take it and we would manipulate it and change it to make it better. So we do use a combination of algorithms. We use different algorithms for different kinds of data types. And we don't use generally the standard algorithms like you can go get various algorithms out there. We modify them and we use them in combinations. So we get higher speed, better results.
It's a volume situation. We had a customer who was going to hire how many data stewards to clean their data?
So Intuit was a customer, and they had
An army of people.
they did 3 million calls a year out of their call center. Our system was on top of 2,000 reps taking calls a year, and they had, I think it was 15 million records, something like that, and they said they had about a 20% dupe rate. So at a 20% dupe rate, they had 3 million duplicate records, and they were going to bring in admins. And I don't remember the numbers because this was a while back, but I think we said if they brought them in, they would need 20 admins for 8 months or 80 admins for 20 months. I don't remember, but it was some ridiculously large number. And so you could bring all these people in. But the problem was, if you brought in a bunch of admins, you don't trust them. You're paying them, I don't know, probably not as much as some of the engineers in the room. And you think you're going to get bored. You're going to just start deleting data. You're going to go through stuff. And what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of paper and you're going to write down, these are the rules. And if these records match this way, then they're a duplicate. If they don't, then they don't. Well, those are all the rules you can just put into our engine, and the difference is our engine will execute them exactly as you want every time, much, much, much faster. And at the end of the 8 months, when they're done doing that, the last 8 months have been filled with a bunch of other people dumping more and more data. So you need something of a persistent engine to constantly clean your data. Coincidentally, we have one of those. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Why don't you continue on?
Okay, okay. So in general, it's going to be cheaper, faster, better, I guess is my simple answer. So As I said, feedback from our customers was picking which record survives is a huge deal. If you have Oracle E-Business Suite, which we also support, they actually don't delete them, they hide them. If you have Siebel, which we also support, they delete them. If you have Salesforce, they actually delete them. So customers wanted to pick the one that survived. The reason I thought it probably wasn't terribly important is because we have, after you pick the best record, the record that's going to survive, we have best data rules. Before we go and say kill these two records, we cherry pick the best data out of the two and shove it back in. But still, we wanted to be able to pick the best record using sophisticated rules. So we do that. So you have a lot of power around getting the best record, consolidating your dupes, finding the right dupes, and then we merge them. Not only do we do that, we do it at extremely high speed. So we use a lot of parallel processing. We use the Salesforce APIs in a very sophisticated way. We just knocked Informatica out of another customer because they use their APIs in not such a smart way, so that they can't do anywhere near the volume. We're highly configurable to manage around the Salesforce governors to maximize your speed. So sometimes I get talking fast, and sometimes I cruise too fast, so I'll slow down. Any questions?
So the phone numbers and all, do you actually look at some other service and validate the phone number is for this person, or how do you do that?
We have a lot of different things that we do with the data, so it's not an all is one. So for, say, address libraries, we get the address libraries from the postal authorities. For things like name synonyms, a lot of matching goes on with Bob and Robert, Dick and Richard. So we have our own proprietary database for that. And then we can do other things like go to third-party sources to say implant a Dun & Bradstreet number. Which is funny because we had another customer who used Dun & Bradstreet to dedupe their data. And I didn't know this before we got into the data business. People tend to hate Dun & Bradstreet. The customers don't like it. They don't like their licensing practices and they don't like their results. So the customer gave us their Dun & Bradstreet data that was deduped. We ran it through our product and came up with a much better dedupe rate and found stuff that D&B did not.
On the phone data, we have telco data, about 95 million US phones to validate against, so it's not just format.
Right, it's from telecoms.
Yeah.
So it's from the telecom sources. Good. This is what I mentioned before. These are the connectors we have today. Oracle E-Business Suite, apps, ERP, whatever you want to call it. Salesforce Siebel. Salesforce is new to us, so we'll be on the App Exchange in about the next 6 weeks. If you go to our website today, I apologize, it's terribly ugly. In about a week or two, it'll be completely new. It's in process. We have Siebel. We have database connectors right now for these three. We'll probably add SAP, and we will plan on adding MySQL and Postgres.
NetSuite anytime soon?
I'm sorry?
NetSuite as an ERP?
That depends on demand. We don't have NetSuite on our current roadmap. SAP and Postgres are hot on our roadmap. MySQL, short behind there. If we have demand, we generally, all of these connectors that you see here, we did in concert with a customer. A customer came to us and said, I want this. And whenever we do develop a new connector, we get a lot of benefit by working with a customer. They always show us stuff that we didn't know. And we're apps guys, we're not just data guys. We started out consulting, implementing CRM systems way back before anybody else here in the room. I'm older than most of you. But so we know apps, we've been users, we've been systems integrators who deployed those for a long time. That's how we got into this business. We kept on doing this consulting. We kept on deploying CRM systems, and people said, our data's a mess, can you help us? And we figured, wow, there's a niche to go after. So if there was some demand for NetSuite, NetSuite is one that we might be interested in. You know, if they had 3 customers, probably we wouldn't, but NetSuite has a lot of customers, they're cloud. We're also available on cloud, on premise, either way. You pick. One thing that I neglect to say, web service API, so we have a full API. If you're not using one of these applications, or if you are, but you've got some custom integration, and I pass data from my ERP to my CRM system, you can use our correct address API in between, or my find duplicates API in between. I'm going to send data from my ERP down to my CRM system, and that's a great way to auto-generate duplicates. We had customers who had those kinds of systems, and they generated hundreds of thousands of dupes because they didn't know the record was already there. So you can use our API to plug it in there. You can plug our API in your website, so you can have people type in their address and say, we correct it, and say, wait a minute, we think this is your address, which one's better, which one should we use, or whatever you want to do. So you can plug it in anywhere you want. So I won't talk too much about this. Standard 3-tier or N-tier architecture. We're a Java application. I said 100% Java, and I said, well, I better put Apex code in there because that's sort of Java. But the reason I talk about our application server is this gives us extreme scalability, security, a lot of the things you need. Other than that, I don't go into that too much unless somebody wants to throw out a question about that. Very high-speed search, I talked about that already. If you have millions or 1 million or tens of millions of records, you can't do that with any great speed without doing, massive parallel processing. So that's what we do. We do it well. Few things, you have a bunch of data. You come to us and say, I've got 1 million bad records. That's all the stuff sitting in the pond. So you can batch clean that up. Schedule it anytime you want, every Monday, every third Tuesday, only after 5 o'clock at night. We have persistent processing. You run the batch, people keep on putting in garbage. Persistent processing looks at your data and cleans it as it's touched. So you don't have to wait for your 5 o'clock batch process. So you have virtually constantly clean data. Interactive, so we have interactive, which as you're entering data in Salesforce, it automatically searches for duplicates. You don't say, please find duplicates. It just shows you, we think these are duplicates or potential duplicates. And Address Wizard to help you type in addresses or remove a lot of the typing and virtually make it virtually impossible to type in a bad address. And more of our web service APIs, I double hit that. Oh, go to the demo. That was the stop hitting them with the PowerPoint. So how's that in terms of not too much marketing fluff? Anybody still awake? So this is Salesforce.com, in case you didn't know. So what we do is we put in a couple of forms. So we put in a DQ+ accounts, contacts, and leads. So this is our own version of the form. A little bit easier to enter data. I find some of the Salesforce screens a little bit frustrating, a little harder to get at data. You can insert data here, you can update data here, you can read, write, whatever. You don't have to go to multiple screens for that. And you don't have to use our screens. You can plug all of our functionality that you'll see here into your own screen. But what you might do is this button here, query, is just a standard Salesforce query. And then this DQ+ search would be our search, which is fuzzy. So if I type in something like Dick Grayson, and I do a Salesforce query, it comes back with no records. So if I go ahead and I do a DQ+ search, and you don't have to hit a button for this, but if I do a DQ+ search, I think I need to log out and log back in?
It might be the Wi-Fi? Or no, you just hit.
Let me see. Okay, so that's up. So I probably need to log in and log out because this thing's been sitting here for a while. All right. So Salesforce is up, so maybe it didn't hit the server. So either that was the solution or not. Okay, so basically if I come over here and I do the standard Salesforce query for, that is not right, that is, we're using what I already had, okay. So I do a Salesforce query for Grayson. And it comes back and it says, oh, I did find one, okay? So then I do a clear and I do the same search using this is the DQ plus search. So I just tab out of, so all I do is type in tab triggers a search, shows me here's these 5 possible records that are a match. So if you'll notice in there, there's Dick, Richard, Peter, and then I type in Dick, and as I tab out, every time I tab out, depending on how I've got this configured, it will do a search. So then it filters and knocked out one of the records because it no longer matches. Peter doesn't match Dick, it does match Rick, Richard. That's all based on our first name thesaurus. And when it uses the first name thesaurus, when it uses fuzzy matching, how it uses fuzzy matching, all configurable in our administrator tool, which I'll show you, pretty straightforward. If you want to put in an address, which you often will, you type stuff in and it automatically starts giving you pop-ups. It's driving the data from the postal authorities. Select the data, it autofills, and then as you're typing in, it'll autofill more and more data. So now I've got in an address there, and I'll come over here and say Acme Data, and then I can cleanse that. So if I cleanse that, it says that is fully verified, and it actually put in a suite number because I didn't put in the suite, and it knew the suite because we have a library which shows which companies are at which addresses. So it cleansed the address, put a 9-digit on the zip code, and if it couldn't cleanse the address, it would tell you, throw a little error in red saying this is a bad address. So at the time, you've got the customer on the phone, you're talking with them, you say, gee, that address isn't working. So those are the two big functions that you'll see inside of the screen. So it autofills addresses, it auto-validates addresses, it auto-cleanses, so you can case data on the fly or remove junk data, clean it up, verify data against various data sources, and it automatically searches for dupes. So that, and it'll find dupes where the query won't. The Salesforce Query is a little bit simple. It does wildcard, leading, and trailing. So we do that plus fuzzy, plus Boolean, plus a variety of things. As I mentioned, this is designed for the business user. This is the DQ Plus Administrator tool. This is where you go in and you configure rules, you configure schedules. This is where you get your reports. The job ran, what did it look like, how many dupes did it find. And this is where you go in and configure the rules. So you can simply say things like, I want to find leads and give me leads where the company, oh, this is correction standardization. Okay, so I want to set the case, and I want to set the case to mixed, and I want to set the value based on verify address, so you can actually verify a company against an address. I want to strip junk characters, strip leading spaces, multi-spaces, trailing spaces. We have a profanity filter. A couple of funny stories about that. So we had one company, they had a rep on the phone, didn't have a good interaction with the customer, put shithead in his title. And then, so they put out a marketing mailer, showed up in the guy's mailbox, Bob Jones, shithead. So that's actually, if you go to companies, it's not that uncommon. In fact, I've seen reports of that in the newspaper. So having a profanity filter is actually significantly used. But anyways, what you do is you point and click, tells you this is a rule you've created, mixed case, leading spaces, and it tells you as you do it. So it didn't take a lot of technical knowledge to do that. So I've got my rules here configured. And one of the things we found when we started doing data quality work was that QA was about 85% of the labor. I'm going to change 15 million records. I'm going to push this button. It's going to go clean 15 million records. I'm going to push this button. It's going to take 3 million records out of that 15 million and make them disappear because it merged and consolidated them. Before I get rid of 3 million records, I need to know what's going on. I really need to know what's going to happen. So we developed a simulator, and simulator allows you to suck data into DQ+. It takes it into our sandbox, so you can mangle it, play with it without threatening your source data. And here's some data there, and these are my rules. So I will go ahead and do correction standardization. It's broken up into different rules. You have cleanse rules, duplicate identification rules, best record rules. So you get to configure each one of those. And I start this, and this is a little legend. And wherever it's blue, that means a change took place. So it did correction of these addresses, it 9-digit the zip code. It shows you exactly what was done to the address. Was it successful? Was it not? If I refresh this data, you'll see the 9-digit zip codes aren't there, so it did some correction there. But when I did run the simulation, I noticed that it had the phone numbers, it's doing 10 digits, it strips them out. Sometimes databases do that. You have the numbers stored in the database and you format them in the UI. And then there's also first name and last, or the company is uppercase, so let's say I don't like that. So I'll go back to my rule configuration. This is a cloud-based version. Like I said, we also have, and I'll go ahead and I'll change the case, and I'll set it to mixed, and I'll save that. And then I'll go to my phone number. It's the mobile phone or the regular phone? Okay, and I'll format that, and I'll put in parentheses dashes, and I'll save that. And that's not really terribly dramatic what I just did, but the point is to show you point, click, I get to make my changes. So I get to easily define how hard is it to get the data in the shape I want. You could give this to a regular admin who doesn't have a lot of technical expertise. They can point and click and get to where they like. So I'll go ahead and run duplicate identification here. Same exact point and click rules. You can say, I want to find records with first name matching 70%, using the first name thesaurus, last name matching 85%, and the zip code, first 5 digits matching, something like that. And you can create rules on any number of fields. It will navigate tables. So you can say companies with this name and some contact with Bob Jones. In other words, I have to match a company record based on the company records and data in his child tables. We had people who wanted to use best record rules because they had contractual agreements, payroll system. So they had a payroll system, and whatever you have is a legal record, you can't change it. So they could find 2 records for Bob Jones. They were in fact the same Bob Jones, but they could not consolidate them. So in that case, we have merge disqualification records. And they needed to look at child tables to see if there was in fact this contract in place, an agreement. So this is duplicate identification. Wherever it was boxed in blue, that shows you the duplicates that it found. And it found those duplicates based on the criteria that was defined. So Daily Planet, Gotham City Industries, they had, in this case, probably, these are leads. So same contact, same address, based on some conglomeration of data, it said these are duplicate records. It's a lot better than you're going to get out of the standard matching in Salesforce. Then best record will identify which record to keep, and best data will find which values in records to overwrite. And it's the exact same configuration as you saw me doing when changing the phone number. So I won't redo that, but I'll show you this and run that. So this is the duplicate records they found. The rows that you see in green are the one that's going to get saved. The ones that aren't green are going to get, they will not survive the merge. And in this case, you have things like phone number and title, and those will get saved into the best record. And we've actually had companies who bought us, or you think our big things are correction standardization or duplicate identification. They said, we actually picked you because you had such powerful best record capabilities. We had other customers who picked us because we had the extremely high-speed search. But the rule configuration, also people tend to like the fact that it's pretty easy, point and click. We've had customers who prospect, before we showed up, they wrote down the rules, or they had rules already defined, and they said, wow, that maps right into this. Because they wrote down what they were thinking. They didn't write down technical stuff. So that's the end of the demo. Anybody here has any? Yes, sir.
Pricing model?
Pricing model, very, very expensive. No, it varies quite a
I
bit.
remember Trillium, it was $100K per CPU.
So yeah, so Trillium, exactly. So we are a lot less expensive than Trillium. I thought, yeah, it was $200K a year minimum or something like that.
I mean, when I looked, it was $100K per CPU.
Yeah. The whole per CPU model, which everybody in the world hated. So we do it based on records or number of users. So if you're a data warehouse, you have a lot of records, no users. Or if you're Salesforce.com, maybe more on users. But we're new on Salesforce.com. We have customers like Bobcat using our product. And we're interested in getting out there quickly. Who knows, end of year specials, we're pretty negotiable. By the time people get our product, it's value-based pricing. I think we're a good deal. We're not cheap, but we're a pretty good deal. If you've got millions of records were relatively cheap. So. Thank you very much for your time. So now everybody mingles. And they also did a bunch of statistical analysis based on the average exchange. So there's sales, service, marketing, IT. And the hottest current is dashboards, 40%, followed shortly thereafter by data cleansing. And data cleansing, they say, is on fire. So that's the marketing fluff I left out of the demo. But if you hang around, you got that slide.
Do you want
So if you want to be on the bleeding edge,
the marketing data?
you're saying you got to clean up your data.
Aline?
Yeah.
All right.